Bonjour à la galerie. On est vraiment heureux de vous voir si nombreux à cette visite que feront Anne-Marie Ninacs, la commissaire de l'expo, et Jesper Just, qui est ici avec nous. On est ravis de la voir parce que c'est vraiment un voyage éclair qu'il a fait de New York pour être ici avec nous ce soir. Donc, la visite se fera en anglais. Hein. Alors, si certains d'entre vous voulez faire des commentaires en français ou des questions, on pourra lui communiquer les questions, soit à Anne-Marie, moi-même ou Marina. Je voudrais aussi remercier Anne-Marie pour cette très belle collaboration, pour cette édition du mois de la photo aussi qui est particulièrement bien réfléchie. Et je crois que le choix de présenter cet artiste, le travail de Jesper Just, dans le cadre d'une réflexion sur la lucidité et l'intériorité est tout à fait à point. Ça s'inscrit aussi très bien dans notre programmation. Je remercie aussi Chuck Samuels, le directeur du mois de la photo, avec qui, enfin, le mois de la photo, ça fait de nombreuses années qu'on collabore avec cet organisme. Aussi, le personnel de la galerie, qui, évidemment, c'est grâce à eux que tout se fait ici. Alors, je les remercie. I'll switch to English now because I have a feeling that many of you are Anglophone. Thank you for being here. There's really many of you, and that's great to see so many. We're really happy to have with us the artist, Jesper Just, who came up from New York this afternoon in a flash visit to Montreal. So he will be discussing his work with Anne-Marie Ninacs. As you know, Anne-Marie Ninacs is the curator of this edition of Le Mois de la Photo, which investigates, thinks about lucidity and interiority. And I think the exhibition, the presentation of the work of Just in relation to those considerations of interiorité and lucidity are a very good match. And I don't know if I think we're correct in saying that, but I think that's your first solo in Canada. I mean, I think you've shown work in Canada, but it seems to be the first solo. Anyways, that's what your gallery said. And maybe that's not the case, but whatever. Anyways, for Montreal it is. There's been other works presented in Montreal, but not an ensemble as broad as this one. Thank you to Anne-Marie Ninacs for organizing this exhibition, for a wonderful collaboration that was very pleasant and constructive for all of us. Also, thank you to Le Mois de la Photo and Chuck Samuels. And thank you to the staff of the gallery, particularly Paul Smith, who makes the impossible possible and real, and Marina Poloza, who is the director of public programs and organized this event, Caroline Boileau, who works very intensely at communications, and Zoe Chan, a curatorial assistant. So I'll pass it on to Anne-Marie right away. We'll move on. Yeah, I mentioned about the French. Wait,
yeah, I'll repeat it anyways. Okay, so I'll try to find a good spot where I'm not blinded by this triple projection. Yeah, thank you. So thank you very much for being here so numerous tonight. Our plan has failed already. We thought we would bring you, guide you through the different rooms, but it's impossible for with so many people. So I'll start with a few technical questions. How many of you have not seen the show at all? Okay. So we'll be talking about the different pieces. I hope you guys can follow. I was hoping that we could see the videos as we were talking, but we'll have to do it just here. We'll try to keep in mind. I'll try to keep that in mind and kind of fill the gaps for those who haven't seen all the films. How many of you don't speak English and can't follow the whole conversation in English? Is that better? That's good. Okay, great. So we'll do everything in English. Don't, pour tous ceux qui sont des francophones, n'hésitez pas du tout à poser vos questions en français, je les communiquerai à Jesper ou j'y répondrai. Alors, so I am Anne-Marie Ninacs, curator of the Mois de la Photo à Montréal, and this edition of 2011, I organized around the theme lucidity in word views. And my main question was, how can a medium like photography that's completely turned towards the outside world, it always photographs outside the outside realm, how could it convey a sense of our inward, inside realm? And amongst the artists that I gathered, I found that Jesper Just's work was one of the most important in trying to replay within the outside world, within relationships, actual relationships and locations, a sense of what's going on inside of us, or questions that we have and how to enact them. I find that the world we live in often reduces what we can be, we can become, reduces us to cliches, and it feels like it's the one thing maybe that Jesper's work is resisting the most. He's using maybe the most or referencing the most cliches vocabulary, the one from Hollywood and movie making and sometimes publicity and characters that we think we know, guys wearing suits and lovely women, and so we think we know these characters, and we think we know ourselves, and then all of a sudden they're more ambivalent than we thought, and their intentions or motivations are much more complex, or to ourselves as viewers, but to themselves it seems too. So I really much value this openness, this enlargement of the spectrum of what human being and human relationships can be, compared to what is promoted, exposed, offered in our daily life. And the way Jesper edits his movie scripts, edits them, puts us in a very active position as a viewer, not just buying what he has to offer, but questioning. We keep questioning what's happening, who are these people, what is happening to them, and within the movie itself, we enter some kind of an inward realm. It feels a bit like telling someone a dream. Well, I was here, and then all of a sudden I was in this other location, and it felt normal, but and yet it is not. In many of those videos, there's a sense of space that one visits as though visiting an inner space, and I will now invite him to to visit it with us.
Thank you.
So what we thought we would do is a type of a conversation in which you're very welcome to blend in. Please ask your question as we go, and we'll try and make that as active as possible. So I thought we would start with the first version of No Man is an Island. It's a piece, and I think it's a good one to start with in a university. It's a piece that you did when you were at the Royal Academy of Denmark. And can you tell us a little bit how you entered the academy, how you started making films, and where this movie is, what it is about?
Yes, yes. Well, before I started the Royal Academy, I was actually studying privately at a Polish charcoal drawer. So it's very traditional, very old school. And he wanted me to apply for the art school in Warsaw, which I did, and got to the, I don't know what you call it, the test or something. But then in secret, I applied for the academy in Copenhagen, where I was living at the same time. But I didn't tell him because he would be really disappointed. But and so I just made something really fast, 3 garbage bags and 3 drawings with charcoal though. But so it's really rough and really low key and not so thought through. But for some reason they accepted it because I guess it was naughty or something. I don't know. They were very surprised because usually people have been working for a long time, and then here was just this 3 garbage bags. But then when I started, I just continued drawing, and they were a bit disappointed by that. But I continued just doing drawings for 2 years, I think. But then I began to feel some limitations with that, and started to do some photography, but with a narrative, and that slowly led into these films that I did. I didn't know how to make films because they don't teach filmmaking at the art school. You have some equipment, but and you know history of art maybe, but and video art of course, but not how to actually go and do it. So I just went out in the streets in the beginning just with a camera and 2 actors, and then that's the first. I mean, I did some few pieces before, but I don't really like to show them because they're not good enough to be shown.
And what was the impulse for that? Did you see you said somewhere that there were many artists, video artists, coming out of the school at that time, or maybe teachers? Were you surrounded by people using video and film as a medium?
I mean, the generation above me was like the 90s, and I think there was this Danish hype with the conceptual, ironic artist, which really did it well, and was the first time that I think Danish artists believed that you could actually do it, work internationally, and it was because of one gallery that believed in the young people. Before that, it was. I mean, yeah, it was very traditional or very safe art, and then this young guy Nikolai came and took people from the art school still going there and kind of promoted them, and there was, I don't know but artists like Peter Land and Joachim Köster and Elmgren and Draxet and other artists that still kind of. Some are still around, and some maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
And so those first films, you said you wouldn't script. You were you were taking a camera, going in the street with one actor, and or 2, sometimes 2. And what would you give them as if you're not scripting? What do you give them as indications, and how would you film?
Yeah, the first one that's on the monitor over there is, I really only had a vague idea of what I would do, but I was interested. I'm always interested in the location and the connotations that's connected to that, and the natural and social or cinematic also convention for space, and that space was very particular in Copenhagen because it was, and I did it doing art school. And it's the place in the city with the highest density of foreigners, and there's been a lot of clash between police and foreigners there. So it was interesting to me to try, because in the media at least I know lots of people living there. It's not like it's being painted by the media as where people get shot and
Okay.
stuff all the time. But so I was interested in that area, and then I just had an idea of putting up. Yes, I want these two men to show very overt and extreme emotions in a public space, because that's kind of, I don't know if it's a taboo, but you're not really allowed to that as a man, because you're seen upon as weak if you cannot control yourself.
For those who haven't seen the video, it is a young man it's on a public piazza. A young man is sitting on a bench, and an older man is dancing to the music of Maman, tu es la plus belle du monde, just dancing slowly in front of that young man, who starts to cry. And in that scene, at some point there are kids coming in, dancing with the older man, and so how did you deal with the with all these not accidents, but things that you couldn't foresee?
Well, it was just like a happening, because I didn't know. I just had this idea of to see what would happen if someone shows this kind of emotion in a public space, how people will react. And I knew, of course, these kids use this square, so they could also have become really angry because we were taking up their space, and this guy who is, I don't know, just really extremely happy dancing on the square. But instead they started to dance along, which I did. I mean, I didn't talk to them at all before. So it was, and of course I cheated in the editing, because it was not like it was empty in the beginning and then suddenly one came. So that is fake. That the order
That's
of
good.
the
You're allowed to do that. I'll just hold on a second. Tu prends ça? Merci. Then I can stop thinking about it. In this, so I'm curious about one thing you said about that place, that it was where the foreigners would gather, and there would. So if I understand well, it's where there's more tension in the place. Is it something you'll consider in like a second level to the emotionality of the scene, or it's just something that you like knowing about it? Is it something that you really like work from?
Well, this first piece, I didn't. I mean, it's also different if you make work in your hometown, because you know the history. But if you go and make, for instance, I just did a shoot in Paris, and then I feel obliged to do much more research, because I don't know. I have to, because who am I to go somewhere and think I know anything about? So it takes much more research to go somewhere else where I don't think so much about it. When it's, I mean, of course I think about it, but it's already.
It's already there.
I already know that, and it's, of course, it's a different piece for Danish people than it would be for people who don't know that part. But I always work with the history of the place, and use it as, because any location, anything has a natural story, and everyone knows a story to a place, whether it's a toilet or it's a gallery. You have an idea of how to behave and how to walk around, and if you break that, and that's what I'm interested in relation to mainstream culture, is it's almost always the same story that are told with a little variation, and so my interest is to work with these and suggest or build up an expectation of something that seems familiar. I don't know. Now we're standing in front of this piece, which is a bit different. But we don't have to talk about it now. But I'll just say it because this is not so much on cinematic conventions and stuff like that. But
let's go through the cinematic conventions first, and then we'll end up here. Are there any questions about that first movie while we're there? Yes. That's a good question. When does the music come in the project?
Well, it's different from project to project, and that project they were dancing to the music on the square. I brought it, but I played it in 400% speed, so it was actually dancing very fast, so that I could put it in slow, and the motion, the movements would still fit the music. So there was kind of an idea of how it should correlate to each other, which is, I mean, a very simple music video trick that is used all the time. That when they sing or dance, they actually do it very fast, and so it looks more sexy or something when they take it down and they still sing the lyrics, even though it's more floaty.
And what about the meaning of the music? And that's one question I had while doing research. Is for us, it's so. I mean, for us French francophones, it's so linked to Edith Piaf, "Maman, tu es la plus belle du monde," and so the lyrics are there with the music. It's not just the music. Were you aware of that? Of that important connotation, and how did you pick that?
Not for that piece, no. I mean, I had a record, which was an old record, which was stereo. I mean, this is not important for the piece, but I just had this record for a long time, which was these stereo effects, where that was made just when stereo came out. And then so after this song, there's a Formula One racetrack where they do funny things with the sound. So it was this kind of almost sound effect.
So you weren't aware of what
No, I was not aware. No.
It's funny because it's such a...
But I mean, aware of the mood of the music that and put it, of course, in clash with the situation. And but the lyrics, no.
But it's quite interesting because because it's a relationship between a younger man and an older one. So there's something about singing to a father, or like in the song is about singing to a mother. So it adds up meaning. But maybe I can take it from there to go to Bliss in Heaven. In that first video and in Bliss in Heaven, there is this character, this young blonde guy who's he's in 2 films here, but he's been in many of your films. Why did you use this recurrent character? What does he mean to you?
I think, well, he was a friend first, and I think that first I just needed a young man, and but somehow it's turned in because he's my age, and there was also this still is, but this idea of using yourself in the video art and turning the camera around, and I mean, I like the idea to continue using the same person, and I mean, it's not that I would claim that he's me, but people started to think that it was the artist, but that was not something I've planned. But it's also, I mean, I anyways like to work with the same actors, because I try to be more precise. I mean, every work kind of it's not like I start from scratch. When I start over, what I learned in the last piece I take to the next, and then try to make it more precise. And that's why if you look at 2 pieces back to back, they might look similar, but then then there's 2 years apart, then it's quite different, I think. So it's slowly changed, but I like to. It's also in a way to because I also work with the same photographer most of the time, and I think we build up this kind of language together. So it's not just me; it's kind of something we do all together. So every time you start all over, it's much more work.
How much did you think about Johannes as an alter ego? Is it only something that commentators are projecting, or did you start yourself, or did you think about him as a projection of yourself?
Well, I didn't think about it as an alter ego when I started, but of course, when I looked for a man my age from same place in the world and stuff, it was to have someone that, I mean, it's not that I think that he is me and what he does is my life, but it definitely, of course, came because it's one-to-one for me, and so I could relate to. It was my perspective, maybe.
Absolutely. So for those who haven't seen Bliss and Heaven, a quick synopsis. A young blonde guy, maybe an alter ego of the artist, is walking in a field, sees a truck coming in a parking lot, a trucker coming down of the truck. There's some kind of a flirtatious relationship between both, even though they're quite far away from each other. And then the young guy follows the trucker in his van, in the back part of the van, which turns into a theater, like a quite sumptuous theater. And the trucker goes on stage and sings in costume a song by Olivia Newton-John, Please Don't Keep Me Waiting. And so can you talk a little bit about, like you did many pieces where there are homosexual relationships and like intergenerational and homosexual relationship where there's a lot of tenderness, ambiguity in, like, is it a father-son relationship? Is it a lover's relationship? The guys are crying. We don't always know why. Why was it so important to have this male sensitivity, like completely overt?
Well, I would never say, because I mean, I'd like to keep it open, and I would never say it's, for instance, a homosexual relationship, because it's an ambiguous relationship.
Yes.
I think.
Thank you very much.
For me, it's. I mean, of course, the actors have a motivation for what they're doing, but I don't want to put it on screen because I think it restricts the piece, and it could be so many different relationships. But I also think it's I think, for instance, it's interesting to question, not to say that it's not a homosexual relationship, but you could say, why is it that because two men are emotional, why is it that people will put it in the box that it's homosexual?
Absolutely,
For me, it's more like working with conventions, and also if you see a mainstream film, the most important in the film is, let's say, two guys are driving across America. The first and most important thing is to establish why these two guys are together and to make it clear that nothing fishy is going on. So I mean, I like to play on, of course, these kind of cliches, and how I work is because I think if you take out a bit of the films, like, I don't know, 30 seconds, it's just a cliche in itself. If you only see that, or if you take let's say a still image, it happens a lot when there's a show, when I have a show that this museum picks a still that they think is good, but actually the still is then, I think sometimes it's problematic because it is just a cliche in a way, because what I like to do is that build up a cliche and then punctuate it with another cliche. So it's like this row of open moments where it just keeps breaking you. And I mean, I cannot say how people see it, but I just want to play on expectation, build up something that you know, because everyone, when you go to a museum, everyone knows how to watch a film, and you've seen so many, and so when you see something, it already suggests, and the logic, or your brain trying to find some kind of logic, even if it's not there.
Yeah, and but when you're working with the actors, you give them a clear motivation underneath, like they do have the motivation, or it's you leave some ambiguity there too?
No, I mean, you cannot work with actors without motivation, because then they get really angry. Because they need to feel secure. But sometimes I did a film in Detroit with 5 African American women, and they were not actors, and I think then you have to work different, because if you ask someone to act who are not professional, then, I mean, unless that's what you want, but then it will become very artificial. So in that film, I just wanted them to be, I mean, more or less themselves, and that was a different way of working. But there is, with actors, always, I mean, Udo Kier is, I mean, it's a very abstract film, this one, but he had a motivation. And if you work with the older men who has to be very emotional with other men, or I mean, also maybe younger. It's not because they're, but usually it's I find a motivation that would be easier for them to maybe work with than maybe is what seems to be on the screen afterwards.
And would you work with the motivation to create an effect, and then even change the meaning of that effect once you're editing? Or is it what we see on screen? Do you know what I mean? Like, you could decide on a motivation and give that to the actor, that and then it'll start to cry, and then you can change the meaning of the crying once you're editing. Or
yeah, but the thing with when you do motivation, when you work as a director, where you don't tell them, because I think as a director, I see myself as an artist, and I don't think I make films. But anyways, but I have to work with actors, so I have to work, I mean, give them direction. So, I think when you give an actor a motivation, you can't tell them what they're gonna feel. You can you can't say that you're angry, because then it's not gonna work. It's just gonna be on the outside. So you have to give them a motivation, and so I don't tell them exactly always that. I mean, usually I say like whatever comes out. So it's you know this is going on, but if I mean who am I to tell you if you're gonna laugh or cry? So I mean it's sometimes the opposite comes out, that what maybe I would have expected, but and then once it's shot, I throw the script away and never look at it again, and look only at the material and what is there, and believe to find the film. And sometimes it changes into something different than what was on the script, and usually that's when it succeeds. When it becomes just what I thought, then it's usually banal and not so interesting. But so it has to get its life of its own. I mean, that's everything.
Thank you very much. Any questions about Bliss and Heaven and those duo movies before we go too far? Okay. So those 2 films have relationships. In the 3 other ones, you have people having relationships with themselves and within themselves. In 2 cases, there are characters, kind of hermaphrodite, in or like with a double sexuality. So kind of a relationship per se, and then the woman dwelling in herself, voyaging in herself. How is it important, or how can I ask the question? Was it like, it seems to be a movement towards like those single characters, and how did you change towards that, or do you have any thoughts about that?
I mean, one of them, the one with the woman on the island and the boat, is part of a trilogy where there's other people. She's playing through. So it's not like a decision now. It's only going to be with one person. And I think actually the stronger pieces are the ones I mean, those who has most effects on but I feel get a stronger reaction is the ones with where there's relationships and not the single actor, because I don't know, but I think it's, I mean, because it's wasn't like a conscious decision now that just has to be one, but it's from different from time to time, and I'm just interested in representation and underrepresented representation in within media, and so taking a character that you might not see that often in, I mean, unless it's used as a comical effect or used as a sidekick or used that way. I'm interested in trying to take a representation that we might not see that often or always have like one-sided representation of, and make a whole film about this character, like a middle-aged woman exploring her sexuality. That's not something that you, I mean, of course there are films, but it's maybe more indie films, but you never see mainstream films about someone who's older than 40.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're women, and being the main role.
So you'll take, in that case, A Voyage in Dwelling, which is over there, you'll take more of a cliche character like the blonde bourgeoise of aging a little bit, and then bring her to something that is that doesn't correspond to the cliche, or open up a reality in a way and show a bit more. And the two other films, you take a character that we don't see, like an hermaphrodite in the movie that in Romantic Delusion. Here, so that's not that character we don't see often. Is invisible in a way, or not in a way. It is invisible in our society, and then you bring it to light. Maybe we can talk a little bit, since people have been looking at it quite a bit, about Romantic Delusions and how you were taking a step out of your usual way of making movies after how many years? 6, 7 years between like the first few movies on the Piazza, and then this movie, which you shot very differently than the other ones.
Well, I was just missing it because it became. I made some films which was very was scripted and had storyboard, and it became almost too restricting in a way to do them. So I just wanted to try to go back to something that I started with, where I just went into the street and just had a very vague idea, no script, and guerrilla style, see what would happen, and here was the idea of Bucharest. I was invited to do a project which was relating to Eastern Europe, and so I was interested in Bucharest because of the architecture, because there's these great clashes of ideology within the architecture. First you have this almost Parisian, I mean it was used to be seen as the Paris of the Eastern Europe, and then you had the communist architecture, which is this brutal and just get as many people into the cities, so you have workers at hand that can build a big castle for Ceausescu, and then when that fell, then you just have a new ideology raping the city in a way, which is now what do you say? What do you call it? It's very capitalistic. Sorry, capitalism. The capitalistic architecture of cheap glass high-rise. So I liked to use that almost like in a way to describe the mental state of this guy who also had this kind of struggle within within himself or his body by being maybe intersexual. I mean, it's not that, but that was kind of the setup there was, and then we tried to explore that. And I don't know if it succeeded or not, but it was refreshing to do it. But it's very abstract, more abstract than anything I've done, and it's maybe too open. I don't know.
Did you feel that your work was in jeopardy of being recuperated by the movie industry or the publicity industry you wanted to resist? Was it resistance in that?
I think I got an offer of doing a commercial for Verizon, and then I thought I have to do that because I mean there's nothing wrong with people doing commercials, or I mean I don't say this is better than working in advertisement, but it just is not good for my project when I try to puncture various cliches that if I then also do a commercial on the side where I do something that looks like my work but just selling a project, and my project would a product, then my project would be kind of curated. I think that so that was. I mean, I don't know if that was the thing, but I was just surprised that. But I guess it's the nice images in some of the films where it's very well polished and stuff like that maybe cheat. But for me, it's important to also work with that kind of polishness. So the form looks like something that you know, but then within the content, it tries to kind of break with expectations, because if it is very handheld, and I mean that's one way, of course, of make a distance to mainstream culture, to just make it really lo-fi. But my idea was in some of the films to do it the other way, where it looks very high polished. It could also almost be a commercial, but then the content is something that you would not expect in a commercial, for instance.
Yeah. Did it succeed in opening up your work, reopening it up for yourself?
Yeah, I'm sure that it I mean, also the thing with working with 3 channels, but my mistake was that we shot 8mm, which is I mean very
not enough.
Sorry.
Not sorry.
It's very, you cannot trust it because you have 3 cameras, and if you have to have it in sync, it's impossible because it's mechanic and it really is not in sync. And then when you have to, when you wanna do like an installation like this, was a nightmare to try to make it match, because even if you film the same time, it loses. Some is faster than others, even if it's the same camera. You cannot count on it.
Are there any questions from the room for that piece? Anything you want to ask Jesper?
What's the significance of the person sliding on the floor underneath the dome? What does that mean to you?
I merged these 2 places, which is one is a casino and the other one is the Ceausescu Palace, and we. One idea was that we shot in the Ceausescu Palace without having permission. So it was very difficult. But then I wanted to kind of pair these 2, clash these 2 places, this old casino, together with the interior of the Ceausescu Palace, and then. I mean, one thing could be, you see all the people, and if you know the story of the palace, is how many people died and worked. I mean, it was almost like in slavery building this place, and so in a way, I mean, him being on the floor, and you have all these. Now it's interesting that now they're almost proud of it in Romania. But even though it is standing for something really nasty, how people were treated, but I mean, again, this is a very. It was done very abstract. It was less of. I mean, we made it up as we went through. So it was kind of. It was not that there was. I think this particular film is. I'm not sure I know every detail what it means.
Often. Wait.
For this one, I think a week or so. Just every day hitting the street and doing. Yeah, I think a week.
With 3 cameras, because we see
Yeah,
what
yeah.
we see is shot by a different camera.
Yeah, 3 cameras. I had a camera and this yeah, this was all. I mean, you're really not allowed to film in there, so it was really difficult to have him walk around like this in the palace. Yeah.
Question? Wait.
Oh, I can't hear you. Well, I'm not going to say that communists mean. I mean, I'm also interested, first of all, because my great granddad was my granddad was the leader of the Danish Communist Party, so I have some kind of relation to, not that I was living in a communist family, but he was in the parliament, and so I have this relations to it, but for me it was more the clash. I'm not saying this is. I'm not. I mean, it's also maybe too banal, or just to say this clash between the ideologies are the same as a clash between the sexes. But I was just interested in the mismatch, in a way, of how society also looks at intersexual as it's not accepted because you have to be either or. You cannot be somewhere in between. You cannot be something third. It's so in, for instance, in America, there's, I think within 24 hours they decide the sex of when an intersexual baby is born, because and it's just a decision. It's not. They don't let them be this. And sometimes I don't, and then they give them medicine or hormones to go that way that they choose.
Yeah, and they usually choose for the easiest way according to medical to medical knowledge, and how they will be able to push.
They cut it off.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's.
And whereas in South American countries, you'll have full villages of Hermaphrodites, and it's just they're there, they live, and they. I remember seeing a documentary. Yeah, it's interesting. They're even forced in one direction. But there's the idea of struggling and staying there with the two. One thing that interested me. And I couldn't help not thinking that it wasn't a coincidence. It's like in most of your movies, a character finds him or herself in a confined space that becomes kind of an inner space. It starts like an outside situation, and all of a sudden, just like in a dream, you're inside, and this space is larger than expected, but it's confined to you feel that there are no exterior to that space. It might be another inner space, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in the largest palace in the world. There are 1,000 rooms in the Ceausescu Palace. It's really big. So just as an image, even though you don't visit all the rooms, but as an image of like this reverse inside outside space, I thought it was quite interesting that you ended up there filming for embodying that inner space with that palace. I'm sorry, maybe it's not very clear what I'm saying, but when we talk about or analysts are talking about our inner realm. Like if you dream of visiting a space, like, and you go from room to room, it's usually yourself that you're visiting, and there's a sense of your use of architecture that refers to that for me, like people discovering an architecture as if dwelling into themselves, just like the lady does in A Voyage in Dwelling. And did it mean anything for you to be in a place where there are hundreds or 1,000 rooms, like the Ceausescu Palace? Is it something that you think about, or is it just my pure curator's projection? Maybe that's my question.
I mean, I think always. Yeah, I mean, I thought about this. It's not as clear in this film as it is in the others, but for that film, it was. I was very interested in the fact that you have a space that everyone hated, and now when the dictator is gone, you actually suddenly turn it into something that you're proud of, and then suddenly it's this. I mean, I don't know if that will answer your question, but I'm always interested when functions of a space or convention of a space changes, and also use it as to describe a character. For instance, I did a film shot in the oldest brothel in Copenhagen, which is like this Asian style, very beautiful, made 100 years old brothel, and then it was run by Hells Angels, and then it went bankrupt 10 years ago or something. And this lesbian woman took it over, and it's in the center of the red light district behind the train station. And she didn't change anything, just the clientele, which was now still women but lesbian women, and that whole idea was enough for me to then place a 50-year-old woman in that place, and it's very ambiguous. You don't. I mean, it looks like a brothel, but then these things occurs that it's more about her again exploring her sexuality. I mean, it opens with just seeing the tapestry, and then you go over her dress and out through her neck, and you can see already there that she's not 18. She's a mature woman, and then it opens up, and some people appears and disappears, and she starts to have this whistling conversation with a man and a woman in the room, and it keeps changing and breaking. But that whole space was trying to describe her mental space by using it almost like a mise en scène, however you pronounce it. But yeah.
Thank you. You said something just now about a mature woman, and it's something that is striking in those the pieces that we're showing here, that you're using aging characters, and it felt, well, thinking about the show, that it might be maybe male emotivity is still quite a taboo, but aging is for sure one in our society, something that we refuse to see. Is it? Can you talk a little bit about this choice?
Yeah. Well. Again, it's. I think I've done four films with this one woman, 50-year-old woman, and I think something that you really don't see in mainstream culture is role models, for instance, being 50-year-old women, unless then they become the mother. They become. I mean, they take a very conventional, or they become evil psycho bitches or something. There's always these. They always fall into these characters. I'm not saying that no one makes films with 50-year-old women where it's about them, but it's rare. I think that. But it's all about the market, of course, and how to make money. I think. But I'm and also that the people running the whole business are older men, and it's very difficult, for instance, to break through as a female director in Hollywood. I think. I mean, there's a few, but lots of. I mean, those who are good, but their dads are very famous film directors. I mean, it seems to be very difficult to.
And this character, the only movie we haven't talked about is Some Drafty Window, and this character has both the double sexuality of the hermaphrodite here, the desire, even more than both, but the desire that the woman in the Voyage Dwelling is conveying, like it's still a desireful being, and yet as close as the movie starts, we feel it's the character is almost dying and being rejuvenated and transformed through the movie. So that movie is even more about aging and the complexity or the knot that.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought about death when I made it, but it's been interpreted like that a lot. And I mean, I'm not gonna say it's not about that, because it's open-ended film. So, but I guess I shouldn't have put church bells on it. I mean, but
well, it's just
the
character starts lying on the floor and then is levitating and goes through nature, and there's like
that's true.
There's a
I
sense
don't know what
of
I was
transformation. Or
yeah, I've used the yeah. I can see that's at Leia, of course. But for me, it was also about there's a lot with mirrors, and for me it was the woods and that she kind of sees in. I mean, not literally, but almost is the nature, the biological self was the kind of idea that and she starts looking. She's almost like a man in the beginning, and it's a men's toilet, and you see the urinals and stuff like that. It's very uncharming in a way, and then she turns slowly in. She covers the mirrors in the toilet with her breath, and as the mirrors are covered, she slowly turns into the woman that she is. But I think, I mean, it's fine for me that there's a layer of death, but I would never have the courage to make a film about dying. I think that's a but I mean, it's I mean, most people see it like that, I think. So it's so I hope it doesn't fail too bad.
Any questions? I don't want to forget you guys. Yeah.
Well, he was. I mean, he's Urukir, so he is Urukir. But I mean, he is really professional, I think, and it was a difficult thing for him to do, because, and it would have been probably difficult for anyone, because you don't have the safety of the film shoot, because it's guerrilla style. So there's no lamps and stuff, so people can see, this is a film. He's just doing a film. He was walking around in with these breasts in the city, being totally vulnerable, and he was very good about it, and really professional. But it was also hard for him, because he had to break a lot of boundaries, and I think, I mean, all big actors can be, you really need. I mean, it seems like the bigger they get, the more security they need to feel more safe, and so that was important in a way of working with him, that he felt safe. But I mean, I think he was a good sport for sure, and he didn't refuse to to anything that I asked. And again, this is also improvised work, so there was no script. So lots of the things that is going on is something he just came from himself. So I think it was like a good cooperation in that way. But it was a hard film for him to make, for sure.
Other questions? For now? Wait.
Well, I think there's always this. Well, it's a lot of the film that something comes, and it's usually with music that it breaks music or like elevation. But I usually use it to break the expectation in a way that was built up, and it can be elevation, or it can be someone turning like a music box in an elevator, or it can be it's not. I don't see especially elevation as it's just kind of one way of taking the moment to break it, and sometimes it's music, and it in all these kind of unworldly things that happen. It's become is I usually use it to be because there's no dialogue, so usually use it as the dialogue between the characters. These different things that suddenly occurs, that kind of, or they break into a song, or they suddenly start. So this outer mechanism that change, but it's. Yeah, I think I only did 2 with elevation. I don't know, but or maybe more. But yeah.
About
This one. Okay. Well, for me, just to talk about that film, because we didn't talk so much about the woman with the staircase was more. She's. I was interested in the whole story about, and also like the title of the show that I didn't make, but it fits well. For instance, that film.
that comes from a quote. Well, we can discuss it.
We can discuss it. Okay.
It comes from a quote from you.
Okay. No, but I didn't choose it. Yeah, but just want to say that was like a female, almost like a story about a female nomad traveling, because I was interested in the history in a way of travelogues, and it used to be men traveling, and it was and the story is always like circular. The travel is not over till you return to your home, and where the family, the wife and the kids, maybe even. So the male circular is, for me, is the male traveler or journey is usually circular, and so I wanted to make something with a woman traveling. Caught on an island, but then starts to travel in the interior of the house that then suddenly is the interior of a commercial Polish ferry, but then and that way exploring and traveling, not being nostalgic about what she leaves behind, and just not returning. So that was kind of the overall idea of that film.
Question? Can you talk a little bit about the music? You said that at first when we discussed the No Man is an Island, you said you played the music on the place, on the piazza, and they dance to it. With years, you've been like the music is very well crafted. You choose interpreters. You have music made for the films. Like, so how do you research it? How, like, and as you said, it's part of the dialogue between the characters, or an expression of the characters. So how do you work on?
Sometimes, as I said, I have it before, and sometimes it comes after. But usually, I know it beforehand, and it becomes the dialogue, but it also becomes the frame in a way for the film, the length when the song is over, the film is over, or the communication, they're whistling, and it becomes like a dialogue. But it's just the exchange of emotions, and sometimes it could also be a dance, or, well, of course that has music too. But these different things that breaks the music also is used to break the convention.
Yeah. But for instance, in this piece, you use a classic chant by Purcell, and there is new music made by, and now I forget the name, but you have had music made especially for the movie. So how, you said you shot it without knowing exactly the direction. When does the music come in? Like, when probably you know the Purcell, when that piece will be in, when you're shooting the scene in the palace. When does the music come in into your mind?
Well, usually it's an early part. But for instance, the film I'm making now has no music, so that's. I usually have it as a layer, and it's because it's the dialogue. I mean, if I don't have it on beforehand, I mean, I cannot. I mean, it won't be in the film, so it won't. Then it will just be film score because it's not in there. So of course I need to know it before. But it's usually based on lyrics or references. If it's been used for the Bliss in Heaven, it was the Olivia Newton-John is coming from a famous from a trilogy called Beaver Trilogy, and by this guy called Trent Harris. But he where there's this is 3 parts with a guy that just wants to be Olivia Newton-John, and so first is a documentary with presumably the real guy, and then he reenacts these things, and that film he cannot show because he doesn't have the rights to it. So so it's weird. It's like a cult, but that doesn't really show. You can write him, and then he will send it to you, but because he doesn't have the right to the song.
And you don't have problems with that?
I have the rights.
Oh, you have the rights?
Yeah, but it took a year. But also, yeah, I don't know why. I don't know if it's different because it's cinema what he does, but it is a reference to this person in so the music has a clear reference, but it becomes something else. I use it in another form, but in that the song becomes this truck driver has this secret performance in his truck, maybe every Sunday, who knows. So this kind of thing that is first established as something almost criminal, that he goes in and then this young guy follows him, and the young guy is not surprised that inside the container is a theater, but he's surprised that the truck driver is wearing a wig. So I mean, playing on and then he starts to sing this song, but very low and deep, but becomes this kind of also performative, questioning this kind of gender performance in a way.
You've been shooting in Paris, and you're just editing a movie right now. Would you tell us a little bit about what you're preparing?
I could tell a little bit. I mean, it was just shot, so it's not finished, and there's so much happens in the post-production for me where I kind of find the film in the material. A lot of times, it's not like it's clear, but it's about a woman in a wheelchair, partly in this park called Buchemont, and partly living in these housing projects behind, and she has this kind of dialogue. This time it's not with music, it's a dialogue with light and reflections in the windows between these two very grey, sad, kind of brutal buildings that also placed on this idea of people living there are isolated, and then trying to break that by actually having two people having this kind of playfulness between the two towers, and it's two different screens, and so the light is reflecting from one window and hitting the person on the other screen, and so forth, and that, and also that when this woman who is wheelchair bound is inside, she can actually walk freely. It's not like magic. It's just also playing on the idea of society, how society looks at, for instance, I mean, this. I was just interested in, for instance, with the disabled person. This person. I mean, when I was a child, you kind of told not to stare. You're not allowed to stare. So already there, it becomes you get this kind of, you don't know how to. I mean, I'm talking about myself, but I difficult. I want to be open, but I still have this in. I cannot look, so so it becomes weird, awkward. Instead of being just natural, suddenly there's this weird thing because you've been told that you cannot look, but which is why can you not look? As I mean, you should be able to, and I think also that it's if you're disabled, it's refreshing if a kid comes up and asks you a question rather than it's like don't so in that film I'm partly interested in
showing that. Do you have a filter while you travel through the world, or like just you walk through the city to kind of get what is out of our usual sight, like characters that are made invisible, like, I don't know, disabled people, or like people we push on the side? Like, are you looking in the peripheries of how do you find your characters?
I think I mean, first of all, because you could also question how can I make a film about someone who's disabled, or how can I make a film about African American woman in Detroit? Because but on the other hand, I feel I couldn't just make films about being Scandinavian mid-30s male, because that's very, very normal in like what you see, or just like white male mid-30s. It's very common. So it's not interesting for me. But on the other hand, I'm not saying that I know how it is to be African American woman. That's also why I let's say, okay, that film, that it's not here, but let's just mention that I was shooting a film in Detroit, and I start with the location, and it's an old rundown cinema that is now a parking space, and so from that the ideas comes. Not, I don't think beforehand that I'm gonna do a film with the African American women. I just think, okay, I have a cinema, and this is it's in Detroit, so 80% of the population in Detroit are black. So it's clear that the protagonist should be black. So it comes from that, and then it's a cinema. So then I think, okay, and I'm interested in representations, and what you don't see. It's not that it's necessarily a hard critique of mainstream culture, because I'm using it myself, but I'm just interested in showing what you don't see, and so from there, it slowly kind of develops, and then I make the films together with with these 5 women, and talked a lot about, for instance, who do they relate to when they watch a movie in the cinema, and it was very interesting how different they watch a movie than I, for instance, do. And also, there's also this thing that one can think about is what comes first. I mean, because when you see black female actors in film, they're usually portrayed loud and ghetto girl, and sometimes you can question what comes first. Does that have an effect on how then people behave? Because everything they see is this stereotypical representation, and so does that also inflict on how people behave? I mean, not just African American, anyone. I mean,
I'm pretty sure it does. It does have a great effect, and if your movies are bringing us to behave a bit closer to what we are, a bit more comfortable with our doubts and kind of unsure zones, then maybe it's a great gift. So that could be a last word. Do you have? I can keep going for a long time, but do you have more questions? Do you want us to continue? You all look so comfortable there. More questions for Jesper? Well, we have him.
It's okay.
It's
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you very, very much.